Hello, and welcome all to Movie Hunter, the show that tracks down the quality of all sorts of movies. My name is Hunter, and today in the 42nd episode, our target is Beauty and the Beast, produced by Walt Disney Feature Animation and distributed by Buena Vista Pictures Distribution, Inc. Following the success of 1937's Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, Walt Disney searched for other stories to adapt into animated films. One such consideration was Jean-Marie Le Prince de Beaumont's version of the Beauty and the Beast fairy tale. The film was attempted in both the 1930s and 1950s, but was shelved when the plot proved too difficult, especially in the second half. It had been suggested by Peter M. Nichols that Disney may have been discouraged by the success of the 1946 version of the film. All the way in 1987, Who Framed Roger Rabbit was nearing completion, and Disney decided to revive Beauty and the Beast with a newly established satellite animation in London, specifically to work on Who Framed Roger Rabbit. Richard Williams, who directed the animated portions of Who Framed Roger Rabbit, was approached to direct Beauty and the Beast, but declined, instead recommending his colleague, Richard Prudhomme, who became the director. In 1989, after seeing the initial storyboard reels, chairman Jeffrey Katzenberg was dissatisfied with the idea and ordered it to be scrapped and started over, causing Richard Prudhomme to resign as the director a few months later. John Musker and Ron Clements were offered the role, but denied, claiming to be tired after having just finished The Little Mermaid. Kirk Wise and Gary Trousdale were then brought on board, having previously directed the animated portions of a short film for Disney Epcot theme park attraction called Cranium Command. Having recently discovered some health issues, lyricist Howard Ashman, who recently finished The Little Mermaid and was working on the upcoming Aladdin, reluctantly agreed to help out with the recent shift into making the film a musical, alongside The Little Mermaid composer Alan Menken. To accommodate Ashman, pre-production moved closer to his home. However, Ashman would tragically pass away 8 months before the film's release, with the film being dedicated to him. On top of being made a musical, some elements were taken from the previously mentioned 1946 film, such as a Gaston-like figure and the living objects that reside in the Beast's castle. This change in plan resulted in Beauty and the Beast having a 2-year timeline, as opposed to the traditional 4. The film released on November 22, 1991, and had a budget of $25 million. The film made $331 million, but including re-releases, adds up to a total of $451.2 million. It became Walt Disney Animation Studios' 30th film after 1990's The Rescuers Down Under and before 1992's Aladdin. The directors were Gary Trousdale and Kirk Wise. The producer was Don Hahn, and the screenplay was by Wendell Wolverton. The story was by Brenda Chapman, Chris Sanders, Bernie Madison, Kevin Harkey, Brian Pimentel, Bruce Woodside, Joe Ranft, Tom Ellery, Kelly Asbury, and Robert Lentz. It is based on the French fairy tale Beauty and the Beast. It was edited by John Carnochan, and the music was by lyricist Howard Ashman and composer Alan Menken. The cast includes Paige O'Hara, Robbie Benson, Richard White, Jesse Corti, Jerry Orbach, David Ogden Stiers, Angela Lansbury, Bradley Pierce, Rex Everhart, Joanne Woolley, Kimmy Robertson, Frank Welker, Tony Jay, and Hal Smith. The film was met with extremely great reviews, sparking 2 direct-to-DVD sequels, an animated/live-action TV show, which in turn got turned into its own animated/live-action direct-to-DVD sequel, and a live-action adaptation in 2017. The film was nominated for 36 awards as listed by Wikipedia, of which it won 20 of. Perhaps most notably, it was the first animated film to be nominated for Best Picture at the Oscars. In 2002, it was selected for preservation in the United States National Film Registry by the Library of Congress. The film opens with an enchantress disguised as an old woman requesting refuge from a storm inside of a prince's castle in return for a rose. The selfish prince denies her request, and she reveals her true form to be an enchantress, cursing the prince into a beast, leaving him with the enchanted rose and a magic mirror. The mirror allows him to see anywhere, and the rose acts as a timer. When the last petal falls, he will be a beast forever. Until then, he must learn to love and gain a person's love in return. 10 years later, in a village not too far from the castle, we follow a girl named Belle, who the town finds to be beautiful but very odd. Belle's father, Maurice, having recently finished his wood-cutting machine, heads off with his horse and wagon to an invention fair. Immediately getting lost in the forest, Maurice loses track of his horse when a pack of wolves attack, and Maurice takes refuge in the beast's castle. There he meets sentient objects: a candlestick, Lemire, a clock, Cogsworth, a teapot, Mrs. Potts, and a cup, Chip, among others. The beast shows up unpleased with the trespassing, holds Maurice as a prisoner, and when Belle follows the horse there, she convinces the beast to take her father's place. The objects try to convince the beast to get along with Belle to try and break the curse, to which the beast fails to invite her to dinner. That night, Belle sneaks off to the forbidden West Wing, where she finds the enchanted rose. The beast finds her and demands she leaves. Belle is attacked by the wolves in the forest, but is saved by the beast, who is hurt in the process, and she brings him back to the castle and patches him up. Back in the village, Maurice fails to convince the people what's happened there, attracting the attention of the local hunter, Gaston, who wants to marry Belle. Maurice goes to save Belle himself, where he falls ill and injured. The beast, having since bonded with Belle, lets Belle use the magic mirror to see her father, where she witnesses his predicament, and the beast lets her go, with the mirror, to take her father back home. Meanwhile, Gaston bribes the owner of the insane asylum to lock up Maurice, and Gaston will let him out if Belle agrees to marry him. Belle uses the mirror to show everyone the beast, proving Maurice sane. Gaston, jealous that Belle has fallen for the beast instead of him, rallies the town to kill the beast, trapping Maurice and Belle in their cellar. Chip, who snuck away with Belle, frees them with Maurice's invention. The objects in the beast's castle defend against the townfolk, while Gaston goes to the beast. The two duel, ending in the beast showing mercy to Gaston when Belle shows up, only for Gaston to stab him, falling off the roof to his death. The beast dies, and Belle professes her love for him, breaking the curse and turning the beast and the objects back into humans, reviving the beast. Let's start, fittingly enough, with the Beauty and the Beast themselves, Belle and, well, the Beast. Starting with Belle, I don't have a whole lot to say. Her beginning shows that she seeks adventure and whatnot, and not becoming the person everyone in town wants her to become. It's a pretty good beginning that establishes her personality pretty well, and sets up her future actions such as exploring the West Wing and going out to save her father. Her nature to explore leads to some pretty interesting turn of events, and while some things, like saving her father, were more so out of a necessity, it still shows a bit of fulfillment in what she's always wanted, and I think this personality fits really well with the story being told. The story being told, however, I feel is a lot more the Beast's. But given that fact, I think it makes it actually quite nice that Belle even got a character at all, and indeed is the character we follow for quite some time in the beginning, and gets the plot into motion. Turning our attention to the Beast, I want to start by complimenting his design. The combination of animals and his voice, too, make for a very intimidating presence, especially in the beginning, but also allows for him to be sympathetic and kind later in the film. The Beast is a lot more interesting to talk about than Belle, if you ask me, because there's actually a character arc and stuff to analyze, and it also gets into the central romance a lot more. Admittedly, the romance side of things really don't impress me all that much. As I've mentioned in other videos, romance stories really aren't my thing, but that doesn't mean that I instantly dislike any romance story. However, Beauty and the Beast, for being known as one of the best romance stories ever told, didn't do a whole lot to impress me. I like some moments, granted, particularly with the Beast, where he starts off selfish but is able to learn to love and be loved in return, by having him not just think of himself. Belle is just the person, because she is very kind, but also will stand up for for herself and tell him off for his selfish behavior. Belle, in return, benefits too, finally getting adventure and magic in her life, and also someone to share it with. Indeed, there are some moments throughout that are good too. The one that really stuck out to me was the moment when Belle and the Beast are eating soup, and the Beast is savagely tearing it apart, while Belle is using a spoon, uncomfortable with the Beast's behavior. The Beast sees this and attempts to use the spoon to change for her, but he struggles to use it. Belle sees that he's trying to meet her where she's at, so she does the same for him and meets him halfway by drinking the soup like a cup. Not quite proper, but not downright savage either. It's actually a pretty much perfect scene, but I guess moments like that just don't appear often enough or are involved in the main plot enough for me to really appreciate the romance all that much. In the end, Belle and the Beast are both pretty great characters, even if I don't care for the romance as much as everyone else does. I just don't find it to be all that fleshed out well. Now, let's take a second to look at the side characters in the film, primarily the objects that reside in the Beast's castle. Lemire and Cogsworth are primarily at play here, and they're a pretty great duo. They don't impress me all that much individually, honestly. Cogsworth is pretty much just a follows orders type, and Lemire is pretty much just the opposite. But together they actually bounce off each other quite naturally and funnily. Their arguments are quite charming and funny, but when they agree on something, it's actually really natural and cool to see, as they are still friends after all. Mrs. Potts and Chip are another prominent duo, and are a quite welcome one too. They are very similar to Kanga and Roo from the Winnie the Pooh franchise, for those familiar. Mrs. Potts is motherly and kind, even to the Beast, which leads to some pretty great moments where she actually intimidates him instead of the other way around. Chip is very adventurous, but also has to be told to slow down sometimes because he is quite young still, but he's a fun character and even helps out Belle and Maurice in the third act. Speaking of Maurice real quick, he's a kind of a nice addition too, actually. It's really sweet to see him care for Belle, even beyond his capabilities. The one thing that doesn't work for him, though, is that I feel like a couple of things go unexplained. For one thing, he's an inventor and even kicks off the plot when he goes to the invention fair, but that's never really explored further. His invention does come back in the end, but that's it. It'd be cool if they did a bit more with that, or they showed him at the fair in the end or something, but as is, it feels more like a means to an end. Secondly, Belle refers to him as sick a couple of times throughout the film, but he's never really shown to be sick. He's old and struggles in conditions like the Beast's jail cell in the snowy forest, but Belle specifically referring to him as sick just confuses me. From there are some objects, like the wardrobe, the footstool who is a dog, and the stove, who I wish got more screen time, but no one else really has enough to mention beyond that. There is a feather duster who appears to have a romance with Lemire, but she's hardly established at all, and doesn't even have a name. Furthermore, she is referred to as 3 separate names in the direct-to-DVD sequel, the stage adaptation, and the live-action remake. I do, however, like the final scene where the objects have to defend the castle from the townsfolks, in a really creative scene. One final thing, I want to defend an issue that people seem to have with this film. People say that the Enchantress is the real villain for turning the Beast into a beast when he was really a young kid at the time, given that Lemire says they've been cursed for 10 years, making it seem like the prince was really just a young kid who didn't want to let a stranger into the castle. However, the existence of Chip shows that the curse kept them all at the same age, as Chip is shown to be a young kid, less than 10, at least it would seem to me, when they are turned human again. Thus, the prince really was selfish and is arguably deserving of his fate. If anything, the Enchantress should be called the real villain, because she also cursed all of his servants too. Now that was unnecessary. Anyway, rant over. Overall, pretty great side characters. Speaking of the villain, let's talk about him next, Gaston himself. Now, Gaston makes for a pretty fun villain, who actually becomes very threatening by the end. However, I feel like he isn't used enough in the earlier parts of the film, and they kinda have to shove him into various scenes to make me remember he exists. He also doesn't really have a whole lot to do with the main plot until the end. Similarly, I feel like his sidekick, LeFou, doesn't really bounce off him all that well. I think back to Jafar and Iago, who were an absolute comedic riot throughout the film Aladdin. Gaston and LeFou just don't have that same relationship, as LeFou is really just a yes man telling Gaston exactly what he wants to hear. This could have been pretty great, honestly, given that Gaston's humor mostly comes from how great he deems himself, but I don't think that LeFou brings a whole lot to the table in that regard. Turning to a positive note, though, Gaston's shift into being actually threatening by the end is greatly done. Gaston deems himself great, yes, but that sentiment applies to the entire town, actually, who all praise Gaston. This is really dangerous as it gives him a lot of actual power, as shown when he is able to so simply convince the town that they must kill the beast, simply because he is Gaston. I also really like the dichotomy between the beast and Gaston. The beast becomes a kind person despite appearances, but he doesn't deem himself worthy of Belle's love. Meanwhile, Gaston is a horrible person despite appearances, but he deems himself entirely worthy of Belle's love. And this is shown no place better than in the finale, where the beast shows Gaston mercy, but Gaston instead takes it as an opportunity to get the upper hand and kill the beast, only for him to die in the process in one of the best Disney villain deaths. It may sound morbid, but I miss when Disney villains could die, because I think it shows a maturity to want to tell a great story, and isn't just a character death for the sake of a character death. It is meant to demonstrate a point, and an important one at that. Gaston died because he was prideful. He believed himself worthy of everything good because of nothing more than his looks and accomplishments. Yeah, Gaston is a pretty great villain, even if mostly for the ending. It nonetheless makes for a pretty great time. Finally, let's talk about the songs. Being a Disney Renaissance film, it is a musical, which means it plays a pretty big role in the film. Before we get started, there was a song fully animated and recorded, but cut at the last minute due to continuity reasons, called Human Again, which I will count in the ranking just for the sake of being thorough. In ninth place, fittingly enough, is Human Again. Not terribly hard to see why this one was cut. I certainly wouldn't have minded it being in the film, but on top of not being all that catchy, the song is definitely the most unnecessary of all the songs. All the others help progress the plot along and feel very natural, whereas I'm not really sure where this one would have been in the film. In eighth place is Gaston Reprise. Necessary because it involves Gaston developing his plan, but it doesn't feel necessary in song form, before continuing the Gaston song from a few seconds earlier. Not bad, I suppose, because the Gaston song is great, but this is just a much shorter version. In seventh place is Belle Reprise. Again, it's just kind of a continuation of the Belle song, but much shorter. I like the iconic moment where Belle sings about seeking adventure, but I really wish it could have been longer and separated from the Belle song from moments before. In sixth place, Something There, which is a good enough bonding moment between Belle and the Beast, but I can't help but think that it maybe would have been better if the scene was just allowed to play out. Musically, to me at least, it's a little bit all over the place, but I can understand how someone might like it a lot more than me. In fifth place, the Mob Song, which is sufficiently scary and threatening, as Gaston convinces the town to aid him in killing the beast. Not a whole lot to say here, except that the song doesn't really get going good until about the middle part, and then maybe goes on a bit too long. But that good part is really good. In fourth place, Beauty and the Beast. I think this is the best way I can explain why the romance in the film just didn't work for me. I don't fully understand it myself, but something just didn't work for me to make this moment as phenomenal as everyone else thinks it is. Not a bad song by any means, just like the romance isn't bad by any means. It just doesn't necessarily come together for me personally. In third place, Gaston. Not the best or most threatening Disney villain song, but arguably the most entertaining. Gaston being cheered up by everyone praising him is really fun to watch, and his sidekick LeFou gets his best moment here. The song is also really simple, yet extremely catchy. In second place, Be Our Guest, which probably requires the least amount of convincing for this placement. A really iconic, exciting, and catchy song from start to finish. That was very close to reaching first place, until I changed it in favor of Belle. Yes, in first place is the opening song called Belle, a really great beginning that is entertaining and delightful throughout. Ignoring for a moment how funny it is that the whole town essentially publicly insults Belle as she is just trying to walk through the town, it's really fun seeing Belle walk through the busy streets. The song also perfectly introduces us to both Belle and Gaston in, in first scenes that really encapsulate their characters. A really fun song throughout that I was the most surprised about. I really thought Be Our Guest was going to rank number one. Overall, about a third of the songs are too short to really rank that high. Another third I personally don't see the appeal of, but that final third are some truly great songs. They are a part of why Disney was on top of their game that decade. I give Beauty and the Beast an 8 out of 10. A very risky score, I'm well aware, but I just personally didn't resonate with it all that much. If it means anything, I can totally understand why this might be one of the best, if not the best, Disney film to some people. If the central theme really struck a chord with me the way the film wanted to, I definitely would have the same opinion as everyone else seems to. As is, however, it's just pretty good to me. Not bad by any means, and very entertaining in many ways. It just didn't quite cross that threshold into the especially notable territory. For me, anyways. Welp, that's all, folks. I hope you enjoyed, and feel free to share any opinions you had on the movie. A new episode releases each week, so stay tuned to see which film I cover next. And in case I don't see you, good afternoon, good evening, and good night.